My name is Michael Maxey, and by the grace of God, I've been sober since April 10th of 1981, which is 38 years, 39 years. Do your math right. Do you know, and here's the reality, I know this is but I'm gonna take a moment to get comfortable because I'm gonna share something intimate about me. So, anybody who knows me knows this is the way I sit. I tell people all the time that I wouldn't wish my childhood on a rabid dog if I had a double-barreled shotgun pointed at its head. My mother died when I was 4. My father took me to my grandmother's house. The last thing he said was, I'm gonna go get a job and a place to live. I'm 63, so you do the math. I know he's dad, so he's out there looking for a job and a place to live. My grandmother was old, tired, sick, couldn't take care of us, so she put us up for adoption. So between age 4 and 5, I learned all of the abandonment and anger issues, family of origin. You know, everybody has their own issues and levels of that. I was adopted and brought to California. And my adopted mother told me pretty much from the get-go that we never wanted kids, so your life would be miserable. And I have to give the lady credit, she lived up to that. My adopted father was a raging alcoholic, and he introduced me to beer, Budweiser, at the age of 5, thinking that, you know, the kid drinks the beer, gets drunk, passes out, sleeps for 2 or 3 hours, and you don't have to worry about him. Trouble is, you take all of that other stuff that already happened and you introduce me to beer, and I don't know that I'm drinking away emotions or anything, but it was a natural process for me. And from there, I went to smoking marijuana by the age of 9. I was taking a drug called Seconal. We called them Mexican street reds. Those of you that are a little bit older recognize that. By the time I was 11, 12 years old. And I blew through a lot of different drugs until age of about 15, I found Quaaludes. And Quaaludes for me was my soulmate. Quaaludes for me was my drug of choice. Quaaludes for me was the drug that I would do anything for. And there are some things that I did for it that I'm not proud of, but that's where my disease took me. Well, and yeah, there are a lot of crazy things that happened. Most of them, believe it or not, somebody else had to tell me about because I was a blackout drinker and a blackout drug user. So the funny thing was the next day you get Mike and sit him down and tell him all the things he did. The craziest thing, however, and I'd actually been in the military for about 4 years. I joined the Navy and thought that that would do a geographical and get me away from everything. I just found out that the drugs were a little bit better in the military. But my last night of drinking and drug using, my wife had decided she had had enough. So she drove me to the main gate of 32nd Street Naval Station, San Diego. And she stopped at the gate and she opened the passenger door and she pushed me out and she went home. The kid at the gate didn't know what to do with me, so he called the chief in charge. The chief in charge didn't know what to do with me, so being a devout Christian, he called the duty chaplain, which happened to be a Catholic priest. I came out of the blackout in the priest's office, and I guess the priest had come to the base expecting to throw me in the brig because I shared with him his lineage to Satan as I was speaking with him, because that's what I liked to do when I was loaded, as I would talk to people that way. But when he found me there in the shape I was in, he felt sorry for me. And he just kept, that wonderful mantra, if you just accept Jesus Christ, your life will be okay. And I knew enough to look at him and smile and say, I accept Jesus Christ, so I could get out of his office. But here's where a God that I've come to understand has a sense of humor. You see, the next day I was changing duty stations, and here's where life gets humorous. I went to my new duty station thinking, another geographical, nobody knew me. The kid at the front desk was the kid at the gate. The chief that was on duty last night was the chief I had to work for. So they already knew me and my alcoholism and the things because they'd experienced it the night before. So this is also what got me into recovery, because they told me that I was going to go to a 30-day education program and that in that 30 days, they would determine if I warranted treatment. And after about 8 days, this gentleman calls me into his office and he says, you can go back to work. And I says, well, great. When do I go to treatment? He says, you're not. He says, you don't deserve treatment. You'll just go to treatment standing on your head, manipulating some counselor. And when you're done, you'll go get drunk. So we're not going to waste the Navy's time, your time, or the money. Go to work. That kind of pissed me off. And I decided that I didn't care what it took. I was going to prove him wrong. And I started working a program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And about 5 years later, I went to a meeting on base because a good friend of mine wanted me to come present a cake to him. And the beauty of this story is the gentleman who told me I wasn't worth treatment was at that meeting. And we recognized each other. And I hugged him and he hugged me and I said thank you and we cried and we got caught up. And if that man hadn't have kicked me out of his office, I would probably be dead today. So that's a little bit of humor that turned into a wonderful life. I think for me, with all the transition that I've been through over the last 39 years, what I'm most proud of, and people ask me all the time, what is your life based on? What I'm most proud of for me is that today my life is based on God, recovery, family, and service. Without God, I would not have recovery. Without recovery, I would not have my family. And without any of those, I would have no desire to be of service. So for me, that's what I'm most proud of. You want to wrap all of that up? I have a beautiful 19-year-old daughter who's taking care of business, kicking ass and taking names. And I don't want to take credit for it, but I think I had a little bit to do with it. If I were to give anybody any advice in any way, I would challenge you to take yourself beyond what the concept of recovery is. I would challenge you to take it beyond the concept of what they teach you in a treatment program. I'm no better or worse than anybody else. I'm a drunk trying to stay sober one more day. Working in the field, and my first 6 years in this field, I was still active duty military. So I retired from the Navy as a counselor and came into the civilian sector. And one of the things I've come to recognize is that if we don't get in contact with our entire interpersonal self, we're not going to recover. Because the drugs and the alcohol, and it's a simplistic statement, is a symptomology of what we've become. And just because we remove that symptom does not mean everything is fixed. My mother died. My father gave me away. My grandmother kicked me out. I was molested in the public pool at the age of 13. I could give you a litany of reasons why I should be pissed off at the world. By dealing with those things intrinsically, internally, and to be able to connect with other individuals who are now able to connect intrinsically, internally with themselves. It's a scary place, but step into your own heart and decide what and who you want to be. There are things that happen to me, and I'm serious. I wouldn't wish my childhood on a rabid dog if I had a double-barrel shotgun. No human being should go through the things I went through. But I also know, and I use a carpenter as an example. If a carpenter is putting up a 30-foot beam, and it's only a 1/16 of an inch off at this end, how far off is it going to be at that end? It's going to be several feet off. If that much of my life had been any different, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. So it took all of that negative to create the positivity of today. So today I stand proud of everything I went through. Not because I should have to go through it, but because I've incorporated it in my story and my sharing, so that you can make a connection with yourself, knowing that even from the deepest, darkest depths of hell that I came from, humanity does exist outside of it.